What happens after a betrayal, a relationship? Maybe it's a friend. Maybe it's your significant other. And actually, what qualifies as a betrayal? Is it when your sister breaks a promise or your parents fail to accept your partner? Is it when a friend fails to be there for you during a time of need? Is it when someone keeps the truth from you for years and yet claims it's not a lie? We've all been betrayed by someone in our lives. Some small betrayals happen regularly. Others, the big ones, the hurtful, deeply painful ones, aren't as easily forgotten or overlooked. But when betrayal happens from someone you love, there are some big decisions that are made. Consciously or unconsciously, they're made. We don't stay the same. Even if we were to pretend that we could, after a betrayal, everything changes. Does a relationship go on? Can it? Can you get past it? Are there degrees of betrayal? Some for which there's no healing, and others that are easier to move through. I ask my guest today these questions, and we'll have answers and questions for you too. In fact, if you're able, you may want to take the quiz even before you listen. The show link is here in the show notes to find that if you're on a walk or a commute right now. Otherwise, it's flipping50.com/after a betrayal. If you want to hit pause, take that quiz, and then come back and listen. I'm Deborah Atkinson. You're listening to Flipping 50, where I address your top struggles and concerns. Most of all, we hope to inspire you. And I share what to eat, how to move, and how to change your mindset. It's often about those former two, so you can have the energy and the vitality that you want, need, and deserve in this second and better half. And yes, quite often we're talking about hormones, talking about muscle and bone and how to age well with your physical self. But it also requires some changes in our lives, knowing by the time we get to that fifth or sixth or seventh decade, we've gone through some things. And sometimes emotional trauma requires some recovery, as well as your exercise does. One correction I would like to make: at the end of the show, you will hear me give a link to my guest. I want to be sure that that link gets stated out loud correctly. And that would be the pbtinstitute.com/healed or hardened quiz. And that link is in the show notes, but I think I left out one of those letters as I gave this up in the post epilogue. So I cannot wait to introduce you to my guest. Let's dive in. Debi, thanks so much for being here.
Oh, I'm so looking forward to our conversation.
This is it's so good. And it's so, I find that it's a little awkward. It's a little uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say that, I think, okay, probably what's coming up for me is actually literally my own feelings of betrayal and where this might have shown up. But let's start at the beginning. Always a good place to start.
Mm-hmm.
What qualifies as a betrayal?
You know, I define it as the breaking of a spoken or unspoken rule. Every relationship has them. Think about it. We had a rule. I was going to show up. We were going to have a conversation. And if I didn't, I would have betrayed you. Now, it wouldn't have broken you, well, we're never broken, bent, you know what I mean? But it would have been a betrayal nonetheless. The way it works is the more we trust and the more we depend on someone, the bigger the betrayal, the deeper the betrayal. So a child, let's say, right, who's completely dependent on their parent, then the parent does something awful, that's going to have a different impact than your best friend sharing your secret. Still a betrayal, different level of impact, but it has so many faces: partner, friend, coworker, someone in a position of authority, self. I mean, we feel betrayed by COVID, government, you name it.
Okay. So that's a lot. Can I ask you this? Knowing who's listening, right? Our Our listeners are most likely, and if you're not, if you're an outlier, please know you're welcome. Okay. But mostly 45 to 70-year-old women, kind of midlife.
Mm-hmm.
And, and I know that means if you're midlife and 70, you're planning to live to 140. But
Mm-hmm.
I still like to declare that as midlife. Often they feel their bodies have betrayed them.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, talk to me just about that one for a minute. So, tongue in cheek, I know we're kind of referring to other humans maybe doing this, but
Mm-hmm.
what are your thoughts about that?
Well, you can absolutely feel betrayed by your body. Think about it. Here you are, you're eating well, you're exercising, you're doing everything that you were taught. If I do this, my body will just do what it's supposed to do and follow along. And it doesn't. And then we feel like, it's frustrating because here we were abiding by the rules and our body sort of broke the rules. We perceive it as that.
Got it. And I think there are a lot of women walking right now who can agree
Mhm.
with that. There's some head nodding going on. All right.
Mhm.
Let's talk a little bit about betrayal because
Mhm.
I think we all know it hurts. It does hurt. Um, Unpack that a little bit.
Yeah.
Why does it hurt, and in what way does it impact us for that moment and maybe in the future?
Mhm. And I love that you're asking that because it not only does it impact us for the future, it can impact us for life. An unhealed betrayal can be with us for decades. But that's really the way betrayal works. And the reason why it hurts so much is this was the person, these were the people who gave us a sense of safety and security. So when this is the person, these are the people to shatter that very sense of safety and security. It's traumatizing. Think about it. This was the person who was sort of like, okay, you know what? When the world is making you crazy, I'm here. You got me. This is safety. I'm safe. And then they're not. So it's so unsettling. And then what happens is we don't trust the betrayer, right? When trust is shattered. And then there's this ripple effect because then we say, well, where was I? How did I not see? How did I not know? So if we don't trust the betrayer and then we don't trust ourselves, it's a natural assumption then to be like, well, then how in the world can I trust in anything and anyone? So we lose trust in everything.
Mm. How do we how do we recognize that in
Mhm.
ourselves and stop the cycle?
Yeah. Well, the first thing is to realize that there may be an unhealed betrayal at the root of it. And,
Mm.
we can spot an unhealed betrayal a mile away. Like these are really common ways I'll see it in health, in work, in relationships. For example, in relationships, I'll see it in one of two ways. The first way we see an unhealed betrayal is in a repeat betrayal. The faces change. You keep going from partner to partner to partner, friend to friend to friend, boss to boss to boss, whatever it is. And you say, what the heck? Is it me? Yes, it is. Not in that it's your fault, in that it's your opportunity. There is a profound lesson waiting to be learned. And maybe the lesson is you are lovable, worthy, deserving. You need better boundaries in place, whatever it is for you. Until and unless you get that, you will continue to have opportunities in the form of people to teach you. The other way we see it is with the big wall that goes up. Been there, done that. No one's getting near me again, that sort of thing. And we think it's coming from a place of strength. It's not. It's coming from fear. We were so brokenhearted. Our heart was so shattered. There is no way we're risking that level of vulnerability and that level of pain again. So we keep everyone at bay. And it's really hurting us because life is about relationships and deep relationships. And, I always use that example of like, it's like you get burned on the stove and you swear off cooking. If you love cooking, you need to learn how to use that stove again. Now, will you be careful and approach the stove differently? Of course, but you need to learn how to approach the stove again. So we also see it in health. People go to the most well-meaning doctors, coaches, healers, therapists to manage a stress-related symptom, illness, condition, disease. And at the root of it is an unhealed betrayal very often. And in work, someone wants that raise or promotion, they deserve it, but their confidence was shattered in the betrayal, so they don't have the confidence to ask. Or they want to be a team player, collaborative partner, But the person they trusted the most proved untrustworthy. How did they trust that boss, that coworker, that partner? It shows up everywhere.
Oh, okay. So much to unpack here.
Mm-hmm.
So, how do we know if we are not healed yet from a betrayal?
Some of the most common, I would say the most common ways to know would be if you have symptoms of post betrayal syndrome. We've had over 60,000 people take our post betrayal syndrome quiz on our site to see to what extent they're struggling. A few things about that. The first thing is, we've all heard time heals all wounds. I have the proof. When it comes to betrayal, that's simply not true. There's a question on the quiz that says, is there anything else you'd like to share? And people write things like, my betrayal happened 35 years ago and I'm unwilling to trust again. My betrayal happened 15 years ago. Feels like it happened yesterday. But every so often I pull the stats from the quiz. Do you want me to share some of them?
Please do.
Okay, so here's how you know. If you're struggling with any of these symptoms, very likely there's an unhealed betrayal at the root of it. So now imagine men, women, just about every age and almost every country is represented. 78% constantly revisit their experience. 81% feel a loss of personal power. 80% are hypervigilant. 94% deal with painful triggers. Here are the most common physical symptoms. Ready? 71% have low energy. 68% have sleep issues. 63% have extreme fatigue. That's saying your adrenals have tanked. 47% have weight changes. So maybe in the beginning, they can't hold food down. Later on, they're using food for comfort. 45% have digestive issues. This could be anything: Crohn's, IBS, diverticulitis, constipation, diarrhea, you name it. The most common mental symptoms: 78% are overwhelmed, 70% are walking around in a state of disbelief, 68% are unable to focus, 64% are in shock, 62% can't concentrate. So imagine you can't concentrate, you're exhausted, you have a gut issue, you still have to work, you still have to raise your kids. That's not even the emotional ones. Emotionally, 88% experience extreme sadness, 83% are very angry, 82% are hurt, 80% have anxiety, 79% are stressed. A few more. Here's why I wrote the book Trust Again. 84% have an inability to trust. 67% are preventing themselves from forming deep relationships because they're afraid of being hurt again. 82% find it hard to move forward. 90% want to move forward, but they don't know how.
Oh my gosh.
Mm-hmm.
That is overwhelming.
Yeah.
Okay. And a perfect title to your new book. Tell me what the answer is. Can
Yeah.
you just give me the clip notes? How does someone who's been betrayed learn to trust again?
Yeah, exactly. And I'm going to just, if that wasn't shocking enough, I'm going to, is everyone sitting? I know you're on your walk, but you may want to just stop for this one. Ready? Those statistics I just read you aren't necessarily from something that happened recently. That those stats can be from a betrayal that happened decades ago. So now imagine something happened, your boyfriend or girlfriend in high school broke up with you, or your mom or dad did something, really hurtful, hateful, harmful, whatever. Something happened. And now imagine here you are 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 plus years later with either that gut issue, that anxiety, that extreme fatigue, that overwhelm, that inability to trust from something happened back then where that person may not even know, care, or even remember what they did. And look at the way we're living because of that. Do you see how much power we're giving to that person?
Yes. Oh my gosh.
Right? That's the crime. The experience happened already. You owe it to yourself to do something really good with something really painful. And that's what happens when you move through the 5 stages from betrayal to breakthrough.
Can you break down those 5 stages?
I sure can. And again, this is, I did a study on betrayal, and I remember we spoke a long time ago, and I
Mhm.
shared the discoveries. Well, one of them is that there's this collection of symptoms common to betrayal known as post betrayal syndrome, and those were the stats I just shared. And this, for me, was the most exciting of all of the discoveries out of the three. And what we learned was while we can stay stuck for years, decades, a lifetime, and so many of us do, if we're going to fully heal from those symptoms, all those symptoms I shared, to this whole healed place of post-betrayal transformation, we're going to go through 5 proven predictable stages. So I'm going to share a distilled version right here. So the first one is like a setup stage. And if you can imagine 4 legs of a table, the 4 legs being physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual, what I saw with everybody was this real heavy lean on the physical and the mental, thinking and doing, and not really paying attention to the emotional and the spiritual, feeling and being. So, if a table only has 2 legs, easy for that table to topple over, and that's us. Stage 2, by far the scariest of all of the stages, shock, trauma, D-Day, Discovery Day. And this is the breakdown of the body, the mind, and the worldview. Shock. Right here, you've ignited your stress response. You're headed for every single stress-related symptom, illness, condition, disease. Your mind is in a complete and total state of chaos and overwhelm. You cannot wrap your mind around what you just learned. Doesn't make sense. And your worldview has just been shattered. Your worldview is your mental model. These are the rules. Don't go here. It's to prevent chaos and govern you. And in one earth-shattering moment or series of moments, everything you've known to be real and true is no longer. The bottom truly has bottomed out. And a new bottom hasn't been formed yet. So it's terrifying. But think about it. If the bottom were to bottom out on you, what would you do? You grab hold of whatever you could to stay safe and stay alive. And that's stage 3. Survival instincts emerge. It's the most practical out of all of the stages. If you can't help me, get out of my way. How do I survive this? Where do I go? Who can I trust? How do I feed my kids? Here's the trap, though. Stage 3, by far, hands down, is the most common place to get stuck. And here's why. Once you've figured out how to survive your experience, because it feels so much better than the shock and trauma of where you just came from, you think it's good. And because you don't know there's anywhere else to go, you don't know there's a stage 4 or 5. Transformation doesn't even begin until stage 4. But because we don't know there's anywhere else to go, we start planting roots here. We're not supposed to, but we don't know that. And 4 things happen. The first thing is we start getting all those small self benefits. We get our story. We get a target for our anger. We get someone to blame. We get sympathy. So we start planting deeper roots. Again, we're not supposed to, but we don't know that. Then because we're here longer than we should, the mind starts doing things like, well, maybe you deserved it. Maybe you're not that great. Maybe this, maybe that. And we plant deeper roots. Now, because these are the thoughts you're thinking, and this is the energy you're putting out, well, like energy attracts like energy. So now you're calling situations and circumstances and relationships towards you to confirm, yep, this is where you belong. Gets worse, but I'll get you out of here. Because it feels so bad, but we don't know there's anywhere else to go. Right here is where we resign ourselves. We're like, this stinks, but I better find a way to be okay with this. So here's where we start using food, drugs, alcohol, work, TV, keeping busy, whatever, to numb, avoid, and distract ourselves from this painful place. So think about it. You do it for a day, a week, a month. Now it's a habit, a year, 10 years, 20 years. I can see someone 20 years out and say, that emotional eating you're doing, or that numbing in front of the TV, or that drinking you're doing, do you think that has anything to do with your betrayal? And they would look at me like I'm crazy. They would say it happened 20 years ago, but all they did was put themselves in stage 3. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah, so does.
Right? This is where we're not healed. We're hardened. I mean, this became so obvious to me. Trust, again, has the 5 stages, but everyone was getting stuck in stage 3. So from hardened to healed is just for those in stage 3, because I'm looking at it thinking, you haven't even experienced the gift of your betrayal. And people now, they're like, gift, crazy lady. Yes. Betrayal lends itself to creating this entirely new identity where you keep all the parts you love and you leave behind that everything that no longer serves, and you create a version of you that never would have had the opportunity to exist had that not happened. But that never happens from that hardened place. It only happens in stage 4 and stage 5. Want me to keep going with the rest of the stages?
I do. Yes.
Okay, because I can't keep anybody hanging there in stage 3.
I know, right? Yeah.
That just doesn't feel right. Okay. So if you're willing, willingness is a big word here, willing to let go of the small self benefits, everything you get from being here, grieve, mourn the loss, bunch of things you need to do, you move to stage 4. Stage 4 is finding and adjusting to a new normal. So here's where you acknowledge, I can't undo my experience, but I control what I do with it. Just in that decision, you're starting to turn the stress response down. You're not healing just yet, but you just stopped the massive damage you'd been causing in stage 2 and stage 3. And what's also interesting about stage 4 is I always use this example of if you were to move to a new house, office, condo, apartment, whatever, all your stuff isn't there. It's not quite cozy yet, but it's going to be okay. And that's the feeling of stage 4, where, it's new, it's unfamiliar, but it's going to be okay. But what's interesting is if you were to move, you don't take everything with you. You don't take the things that don't represent who you want to be when you're in that new space. And what I found was if your friends weren't there for you, you've outgrown them right here. You don't take them with you from stage 3 to stage 4. And people ask me all the time, I've had these friends 10, 20, 30 years. What the heck is it me? Yes, it is. You're undergoing a transformation. And if they don't rise, they don't come. So when we don't know what's happening, it's so confusing, but it is so common. Anyway, when we've made stage 4 cozy, we've made it okay. We move into the 5th and most beautiful stage. And this is healing, rebirth, and a new worldview. The body starts to heal. Self-love, self-care, eating well, exercise, things like that. We didn't have the bandwidth for that earlier. Now we do. The mind is healing. We're making new rules. We're making new boundaries based on the road we just traveled. And we have a new worldview based on all we see so clearly now. And the 4 legs of the table, in the beginning, it was all about the physical and the mental. By this point, we're solidly grounded because we're focused on the emotional and the spiritual too. Those are the 5 stages.
Okay, so I want to bring people back, and we're going to link to the last time you were here and the episode where you shared a little bit. But I feel like I am talking to a different person. And it hasn't been all that long.
Yeah.
I mean, compared to what you've just said, that people can stay in it for 35 years. And
Easily.
you had an accelerated, by comparison,
Yes.
move through those steps. Can you just talk a little bit about what was it and
Yeah.
what do you think supported you in doing that?
I love that question so much. And I love it because there is no secret behind any of this. The stages are a roadmap, and the roadmap has been created, right? That's the first thing. But what I did, and for those who aren't familiar, I mean, you don't study something like betrayal unless you have to. It's not like, oh, that's a nice topic, I want to study it. No. So after the betrayal of my family, and I thought I did everything I needed to do to heal, and then a few years later, it happened again, and this time it was my husband. And I'm a big believer in that whole idea of if nothing changes, nothing changes. So I got him out of the house and looked at the 2 experiences, and I thought, okay, what's similar to these 2? Of course, me. But realized, you know what? It's time to. I never took my needs seriously. I was always last on my list, and that just wasn't working anymore. And here I was, 4 kids, 6 dogs, a thriving business, and I'm like going back for a PhD, and that's what I did. And then it was the study on betrayal that led to the 3 discoveries. So what moved me through so quickly was, honestly, I was the case study. I was implementing everything that I was learning and being sort of my own guinea pig here. And then once we opened up the PBT Institute, and once I was, certifying coaches and teaching the 5 stages, it was honestly the greatest hack ever, because I had to represent the work. And it's funny because you can so relate to this. A million years ago, I was a personal trainer, and there were days where I didn't want to work out, but I knew I had to face everybody. And this was sort of the same thing, where I knew that I was teaching this, and just to keep my conscience clean and not have to think about it, just do the work so I could just show up and be authentic, representing. Listen, this is for me the hardest thing I've ever been through, and the most transformative. And the way it works is through a willingness and just not allowing those triggers that do take you down to keep you down.
Wow. So good. Oh man, there's so much that we could ask here. Let's back up just for a
Mhm.
second to what if a woman is actually, there's this superficial, I'm doing the right things, actually
Mm.
following the diet, I'm exercising correctly. What about the trauma that could be stored in the
Mhm.
betrayal that still may be, say, a roadblock to losing weight or allowing the exercise to actually do what it could and should in a healthy person? Can
Yeah,
you can you speak into that?
oh, I absolutely can. And here's the thing. You can eat so well, and half the time it won't even matter because your gut is such a wreck that you're not even getting the benefit of all the beautiful nutrients you're taking in because of the stress. Also, this is what's interesting too. And I remember working with one of our members in the PBT Institute, and she got so serious about her eating and her exercise. And she meets with me and she's talking to me about everything she's doing now. I've been coaching 30 years, and so I know, a few things of what to look for. And if she had come to me as, let's say, a weight loss or a health client, it would have been a very different conversation. Then she's doing a phenomenal job. But I stopped her, and she was looking for the big accolades. And I said, well, and I stopped her. I said, well, this would be wonderful if you were here for your health. She's like, well,
Mhm.
what do you mean? I'm eating well. I'm exercising. I'm like, that's great. But that's not, that's not the problem.
Mhm.
Let's talk about your heart. Let's talk about what you're going through here. And then all of a sudden she realized she was actually using getting her health together as a distraction from working on her heart. You see how that
Mhm.
works?
I do. I do.
Very subtle, but it's one of those things where,
Sneaky.
yeah, it
Very
is sneaky because you look at it and say, oh, well, this is such a healthy thing you're doing. Isn't that
Mhm.
great? No, it's not. I mean,
Mhm.
it is good, but if the challenge is healing your heartbreak and
Mhm.
healing the mindset and the beliefs that has you thinking this was about you and everything else, all the eating well and exercising in the world is not going to fix that.
Mm.
It's only masking it.
Because I have you, study of one, in front of me, right?
Hmm.
Can I ask, I mean, did you notice yourself, like you've always had the history. I mean,
Hmm.
you've taken good care of yourself. You
Hmm.
you are the health coach, you were a fitness trainer, you
Hmm.
were exercising. Did you notice like the results and the change in your energy, your fatigue, or
Yeah.
what happened to you from like onset, if you
Hmm.
will, to working through it and to now?
Yeah. And I talk about this in Hardened to Healed because I really should be the healthiest person besides you that I know, because
Aw.
I do eat well and I do exercise. And here's the thing, when you're doing all those things and it's not working,
Mhm,
you know something's wrong. So the way my body happens to work is it'll show up as much as I'll feel something and experience something mentally and emotionally, it's always physical. So I have, like, for example, this is a story I tell in From Hard to Healed, where I've had such bad arthritis. And again, autoimmune. Here I am. I'm eating well. I'm exercising. I should not have arthritis, but it was so bad in both feet. So imagine from the outside looked fine. On the inside, I had worn away all my cartilage. So I couldn't even bend my toes. So imagine I had to walk on the outside of my feet because I couldn't bend my toes. So you do that, and of course that throws off your hips. So I had cortisone shots in both feet just to manage the pain for a really long time. That wasn't working. So I opted for the surgery. Did surgery on one leg. Of course, you don't want to do two at a time. So I did on the first foot, cast crutches, the whole nine. And then a couple years later on the other foot, both failed surgeries.
Mm.
Right. Now I have to time if I'm wearing heels. And, the reason why I got the surgery was, well, because I wanted to wear heels. Don't judge, but, wasn't ready just to wear sensible shoes for the rest of my life. So I knew with two failed surgeries from two different surgeons, and the second one said, "Oh, we do it differently. This is 100% going to work." And neither one did. So that's when you know something's going on. So I was so desperate for a solution, and I'm exploring all these different things. So I tried tapping, EFT, and is your community familiar with tapping?
We haven't talked about it. So we might want to describe what that is.
Oh, okay. So imagine just a way to access these, like how you'd have acupuncture, acupressure, where you're releasing stuck energy from these energetic points. And I don't know this stuff well enough, but I heard it was really a handy tool and it works. So I was like, let me try this because there's no reason why I should be in so much pain. And this was a day. Now imagine this. This was a day where I wore flats all day long. And then we went, this was in the beginning of our reconciliation, my husband and I, and we went out for just a simple dinner. And I was wearing, again, I was not wearing heels. I woke up, but there was this moment, and it was one moment during the night with him where we finished dinner and I felt 100% safe. And I hadn't felt that at all. But this was like 100%. I have nothing to worry about. And it was such a powerful moment that I remembered it. Well, I went to sleep, woke up the next morning, and it was as if I danced in 6-inch heels all night long, which didn't make any sense. So I start tapping. I'm like, what the heck is happening here? And all of a sudden I hear, your hard stance keeps you in a hard stance. Meaning my rigid and unbending belief that I can't move forward keeps me in a rigid and unbending physical place. Do you see how this works?
Wow.
Yeah. It caught me red-handed.
Oh,
It's so common. Our body, I mean, of course, these things are physical. They can stem from a physical and overuse injury, this, that, the other thing, but we cannot discount the emotional component as well. And for me, that's how my body lets me know. Like, even I have 6 out of 7 of my cervical discs are pressing on nerves in my neck. So I can barely turn my head. I walk around like Frankenstein. I almost had to stop driving because I can hardly turn my head to look over my shoulder. Well, when you think about what does the neck represent? What does the throat represent?
yep.
So failure to speak, anxiety, stress, like all these things. It makes so much sense.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, listeners, I just want to interpret this a little bit for you. You're right. If you're thinking, I do all these things, I take
Mm-hmm.
the anti inflammatories, I don't eat inflammatory foods, I'm exercising in a way that should be benefiting me, and you still are not like reaping the rewards that you feel you should. Is there something else to look at? And we're not wanting to thrust a problem on you,
No.
but also just encouraging that you look for, is there something there that you have convinced yourself maybe that you're over, is over for you, and maybe is still in there somewhere?
And I'll add this too. There
Mm.
were 3 groups in the study who did not heal. And the first was the group that just refused to accept their betrayal. They had their story, they were sticking with it. The second group, this was the group that was numbing, avoiding, distracting. They ran to the doctor who put them on a mood stabilizer or anti-anxiety medication. They started numbing, either emotionally eating, drinking, whatever. They didn't heal. May have made the day a bit easier to get through, not without a price. The third group, this was the group where the betrayer had very little consequences. So whether it was out of not wanting to break up a family, financial fear, fear of change, religious reasons was a big one. Whatever the reason was, they just tried to turn their back on it. I saw 2 things with this group. The first was a further deterioration of the relationship. And the second thing was this group was the most physically sick. Your broken heart can't
Interesting.
handle that.
Oh, gosh.
Hmm.
Wow.
So now imagine you're trying to eat well and you're trying to exercise,
Uh,
but look what's happening. You see?
mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So see. Oh, goodness. Okay. Well, I want to ask you one more question. Hardest
Hmm.
of all, okay? Because there's so much. I could keep you here all day,
Hmm.
honestly. uh, is there a question I should have asked you?
Is there a question? Yeah,
Mm.
how about this? Can you heal?
Yes. Can you heal?
It's proven and it's predictable. You can heal from all of it. Here's the thing. I didn't do one thing anyone else couldn't do. I just didn't want to be the poster child for betrayal, you know?
Mm.
So you really look at it and say, and this is what I know. Rebuilding is always a choice, whether you rebuild yourself and move on. And that's what I did with my family. It just wasn't an option to rebuild with them. Uh, or if the situation lends itself, if you're willing, if you want to, you rebuild something from the ground up, brand spanking new with the person who hurt you. And that's what I did with my husband. So, not long ago, as two completely transformed people, we married each other again. New rings, new vows, new dress, and our 4 kids is our bridal party. And I never would have even considered anything like that if I wasn't totally different. And for sure, if he wasn't. And betrayal will show you who someone truly is. It also has the opportunity to wake them up to who they temporarily became.
Such a fantastic story. I love so much. Thank you so much for being so transparent about your own journey.
Mm.
And thank you for turning it into gold nuggets for other people.
Thank you for the opportunity to share, my friend.
All right, listeners, there's a lot here. I would love to have comments and questions. I'm going to put all the ways to connect with Debi below the show and specifically the quiz. So the pbinstitute.com/healed or hardened quiz. The link will be in the show notes. Those will be at flipping50.com/after a betrayal. So what are you waiting for? We want to hear from you. I love hearing that we've brought you a nugget of value or something that made you reflect a little bit more than just talking about reps and sets and how to do those squats so they don't hurt your knees. But I would love to hear it. So beyond that, everybody, what are you waiting for? Let's start flipping 50 today.